Good morning, students. Welcome to class. So we'll take off with the discussion on The Gentleman of the Jungle by Jomo Kenyatta. And for context, we will need the short story to be read again by another fluent reader, and then we can discuss it, and then we can proceed. Okay, I'm reading The Gentleman of the Jungle by Jomo Kenyatta. It's a short story. Once upon a time, an elephant made a friendship with a man. One day, a heavy thunderstorm broke out. The elephant went to his friend, who had a little hut at the edge of the forest, and said to him, "My dear good man, will you please let me put my trunk inside your hut to keep it out of this torrential rain?" The man, seeing what situation his friend was in, replied, "My dear good elephant, my hut is very small, but there is room for your trunk and myself. Please put your trunk in gently." The elephant thanked his friend, saying, "You have done me a good deed, and one day I shall return your kindness." But what followed? As soon as the elephant put his trunk inside the hut, slowly he pushed his head inside and finally flung the man out in the rain, and then lay down comfortably inside his friend's hut, saying, "My dear good friend, your skin is harder than mine, and as there is not enough room for both of us, you can afford to remain in the rain while I am protecting my delicate skin from the hailstorm." The man, seeing what his friend had done to him, started to grumble. Animals in the nearby forest heard the noise and came to see what was the matter. All stood around listening to the heated argument between the man and his friend the elephant. In this turmoil, the lion came along roaring and said in a loud voice, "Don't you all know that I am the king of the jungle? How dare anyone disturb the peace of my kingdom?" On hearing this, the elephant, who was one of the high ministers in the jungle kingdom, replied in a soothing voice and said, "My lord, there is no disturbance of the peace in your kingdom. I have only been having a little discussion with my friend here as to the possession of this little hut which your lordship sees me occupying." The lion, who wanted to have peace and tranquility in his kingdom, replied in a noble voice, saying, "I command my ministers to appoint a commission of inquiry to go thoroughly into this matter and report accordingly." He then turned to the man and said, "You have done well by establishing friendship with my people, especially with the elephant, who is one of my honorable ministers of state. Do not grumble anymore. Do not grumble anymore. Your heart is not lost to you. Wait until the sitting of my imperial commission, and there you'll be given plenty of opportunity to state your case. I am sure that you'll be pleased with the findings of the commission." The man was very pleased by these sweet words from the king of the jungle and innocently waited for his opportunity in the belief that naturally the hut would be returned to him. The elephant, obeying the command of his master, got busy with other ministers to appoint the commission of inquiry. The following elders of the jungle were appointed to sit in the commission. 1. Mr. Rhinoceros. 2. Mr. Buffalo. 3. Mr. Alligator. 4. The Right Honorable Mr. Fox, to act as chairman. And 5. Mr. Leopard, to act as secretary to the commission. On seeing the personnel, the man protested and asked if it was not necessary to include in his commission a member from his side. But he was told that it was impossible, since no one from his side was well enough educated to understand the intricacy of jungle law. Further, that there was nothing to fear, for the members of the commission were all men of repute for their impartiality in justice, and as they were gentlemen chosen by God to look after the interest of the races, less adequately endowed with teeth, to look after the interest of the races less adequately endowed with teeth and claws, he might rest assured that they would investigate the matter with the greatest care and report impartially. The commission sat to take the evidence. The Right Honorable Mr. Elephant was first called. He came along with a superior air, brushing his task with a sapling which Mrs. Elephant had provided, and an authoritative voice said, "Gentlemen of the jungle, there is no need for me to waste your valuable time in relating a story which I am sure you all know. I have always regarded it as my duty to protect the interest of my friends, and this appears to have caused a misunderstanding between myself and my friend He. He invited to save his hut from being blown away by a hurricane, as the hurricane had gained access owing to the unoccupied space in the hut. I considered it necessary in my friend's own interest to turn the undeveloped space to a more economic use by sitting in it myself, a duty which any of you would undoubtedly have performed with equal readiness in similar circumstances." After hearing the Right Honorable Mr. Elephant's conclusive evidence, the commission called Mr. Aina and other elders of the jungle who all supported what Mr. Elephant had said. They then called the man, who began to give his own account of the dispute. But the commission cut him short, saying, "My good man, please confine yourself to relevant issues. We have already heard the circumstances from various unbiased sources. All we wish you to tell us is whether the undeveloped space in your hut was occupied by anyone else before Mr. Elephant assumed his position." The man began to say no, but at this point, the commission declared that they had heard sufficient evidence from both sides and retired to consider their decision. After enjoying a delicious meal at the expense of the Right Honorable Mr. Elephant, they reached their verdict, called the man, and declared as follows. In our opinion, this dispute has arisen through a regrettable misunderstanding due to the backwardness of your ideas. We consider that Mr. Elephant has fulfilled his sacred duty of protecting your interest, as it is clearly for your good that the space should be put to its most economic use, and as you yourself have reached the stage of expansion which would enable you to fill it, we consider it necessary to arrange a compromise to suit both parties. Mr. Elephant shall continue his occupation of your hut, but we give you permission to look for a site where you can build another hut more suited to your needs, and we will see that you are well protected. The man, having no alternative and fearing that his refusal might expose him to the teeth and the claws of members of the commission, did as they suggested. But no sooner had he built another hut than Mr. Rhinoceros charged him with his horn, lowered, and ordered the man to quit. A royal commission was again appointed to look into the matter, and the same finding was given. The procedure was repeated until Mr. Buffalo, Mr. Leopard, Mr. Hyena, and the rest were all accommodated with the new huts. Then the man decided that he must adopt an effective method of protection, since commission of inquiry did not seem to be of any use to him. He sat down and said, Ngenda Tindagaga Motegi, which literally means there's nothing that treads on the earth that cannot be trapped. Or in other words, you can fool people for a time, but now forever. Early one morning, when the huts already occupied in the jungle lords were all beginning to decay and fall to pieces, he went out and built a bigger and better hut a little distance away. No sooner had Mr. Rhinoceros seen it than he came rushing in, only to find that Mr. Elephant was already inside, as sound asleep. Mr. Leopard next came to the window. Mr. Lion, Mr. Fox, and Mr. Buffalo entered the doors, while Mr. Hyena howled for a place in the shed, and Mr. Alligator basked on the roof. Presently, they all began disputing about the right of penetration. And from disputing, they came to fighting, and while they were all embroiled together, the man set the hut on fire and burnt it to the ground, jungle lords and all. Then he went on saying, peace is costly, but it's worth the expense, and lived happily ever after. So note that we can read Jomo Kenyatta's The Gentleman of the Jungle as an allegory on colonialism. An allegory is a work of art that has more than one level of meaning. An allegory is a work of art that has more than one level of signification. We have the surface meaning, then we have the deep meaning. The deep meaning is usually more important than the surface meaning, because the deep meaning is the real meaning of the work. The surface meaning is just a deter. Sometimes authors write in allegory to escape censorship. Because as you can see in the story, it is the story about a man and an elephant and a set of animals. And so on that surface meaning, you will not have issues in the real world themes that the work raises. So there's a man who has a hut, and the elephant comes to ask for a space to stay to avoid the storm. The man in his kindness allows him to stay, but when the elephant comes in, he pushes the man out of his house into the rain and does not allow the man to come in again. There's an exchange of words, and it attracts the attention of other animals. The lion, who thinks himself to be the owner of the jungle or the king of the jungle, comes to give justice, sets up a commission of inquiries comprised of mostly animals, no human representation, which shows that there's not going to be justice for the man. And then, true to form, the man is not even allowed to give his full testimony. He's shut up. The elephant is given more space to account for himself. In fact, the commission of inquiry eats the food that is given by the elephant, which is a form of bribe. And then after eating the food, they are able to give judgment that does not favor the man who originally owned the house. And they employed a set of complex laws to determine the case. And so the man obeys the commission of inquiry, goes to set up another hut for himself, and the situation repeats itself till he only builds his houses to house the other animals while he remains homeless. Finally, the man decides to take to violence to resolve the matter, because no amount of patience with the commission of inquiry will bring about justice. And so this is as I normally tell you, even if a literature text comprises animal characters all through. Those animal characters represent human beings in human society. In fact, when we use the word jungle, we use jungle to show a human society that's disorganized, that's lawless, like Nigeria. A human society that's disorganized and lawless, like Nigeria and some parts of Africa, where people, in fact, where animals are more organized than human beings, where crazy and insane things happen that will not even happen in the animal kingdom. That's why we call it a jungle. It's a jungle because you look for justice and you cannot find justice. And it is a jungle because it is a place where black is called white and white is called black. It's a jungle because the laws only favor the rich and the powerful members of society. And the law does not favor the poor and the less privileged members of society. It's a jungle. Of course, we can read the meaning of this short story into all parts of society, even contemporary Africa, but we are going to situate it in East Africa in colonial times. So that's what consensus given where we are in our topic on modern African prose fiction. Remember, I have said that when you're studying East African literature relating to colonialism, you should pay attention to the land. The land is a metaphor, the land is a motif in East African literature that relates to colonialism. Because, as I said, the kind of colonialism that happened in East Africa was settler colonialism, where the colonial masters left their own land in Europe to come and stay there. And if they have to stay, then they have to displace owners of the land. So, in The Gentleman of the Jungle, there are two races. The man represents the Africans. Africans are known to be humane. Africans are known to be kind, generous, hospitable. And it is always that kindness and generosity and hospitality that will be the undoing. Africa was destroyed by kindness, generosity to the Europeans. Africa was destroyed because they invited the Europeans in and allowed them, gave them spaces to build houses to stay. And then they tried to push Africans out of their houses. It happened in East Africa, it happened in South Africa. And at the end of the day, the people had to take a stand that it is only violence and not law that will get the colonial masters out of Africa. It wasn't necessarily going to be by begging them, appealing to them, or appealing to whatever laws they had made that would make them to leave. It was going to be violence, and it was violence that made them leave. And of course, that reminds you of the Mau Mau freedom movement. Because the Mau Mau freedom movement made life so uncomfortable, so hellish for the colonial masters that they themselves at some point decided that they were going to leave. They were going to pack up and leave. You could see how this literature justifies the doctrine of violence in freeing an oppressed set of people. It gets to a point when appealing to the oppressor will not do. It gets to a point when even trying to appeal to their religious perspective or emotions will not do, because they are actually devils. To appeal to their laws is useless because they made the laws and they knew the loopholes they put in the law that will make them have power over you all the time if you are appealing to the law. And so you have to return to the law of justice, the law of nature, which is violence. Of course, when you understand that, you realize that this short story has a Marxist breadth. Because what happens at the end of the short story is nothing but the revolution. The revolution that swept across Africa, leading to independence of most of the nations. And when a country like Nigeria gets to a point where it is right now, you realize that it's only a revolution that can actually turn things around. Because you go and tell the leaders, please change, do better. You can do better. But they are evil. Because they are evil, they're not going to do anything about it until they are met with the right instrument. Every stage in human history where people have been oppressed perpetually and the oppressors have refused to change, it always results in violence. Gets to a point where people have to hold others by the neck, where a fight has to break out, where the person who has always been silent will say, I am not going to be silent anymore. And thereafter, things will begin to change. And that is the truth. As you leave school in a year or two, you will come across these situations. They thrive on your silence. They thrive on your humility. They thrive on your attempt to be saved and humble. Being a good guy. They thrive on that. Until you draw the line. So you draw the line and ask them cross. So the initial part of the story reminds us of how colonialism started. Colonialism did not start with the colonial masters coming with force to take over Africa. No. These guys are brilliant. These guys are brilliant. They came with meekness. They came with some form of deceptive vulnerability. They came requesting to be shown the way. Oh, we are lost. We don't know where we are going. Can you show us the way to that island? Oh, we have been traveling for 7 days. We don't have food to eat. Can you give us some food? And Africans who are hospitable, kind, and generous. We say, of course. They'll help them. So the man represents Africa, the animals represent Europeans. Because in real terms, Europeans are animalistic. Europeans are the uncivilized ones here. And that's why they are being depicted in animal imagery. They claim to have brought us civilization, but that is all a lie. They are the ones who actually needed to be civilized, given the things that they did here in Africa. They were the ones who needed to be civilized. And I've said over and over and over, the Europeans did not civilize anybody. They twisted history to tell you that they civilized us. They didn't civilize us. We civilized them. We brought them out of the caves. The Moors of Europe brought them out of the caves and civilized them. The Moors were Africans. The Europeans did not have what it took to civilize people. When they were living in caves, we had empires here in Africa. And the black people are the original inhabitants of the earth. They let anybody lie to you by twisting history, because they have the written tradition. They destroy their libraries, burn it down to the ground, so that they can write nonsense and make you believe in the inferiority of yourself and your ancestors. These people do not even have simple hygiene. They didn't know how to bathe. They didn't know how to organize their cities to be clean. And now some people, even our leaders now, say we should look up to Europeans to develop our society. And that is why we are not developed, because of the mentality of the leaders that we have. They learned hygiene and how to keep cities clean from us. So wherever they saw African civilization, or whatever looked like civilization in Africa, they burned it down so they can write that there was nothing there when they got there. So once Africans allowed them to stay, that was the mistake. So when the elephant pushes out the man into the rain, that action signifies the displacement of Africans on their own land by the colonial masters. At the point where the elephant pushes out the man into the rain in the short story, that signifies, the deeper meaning of that action is the displacement of Africans in their own land by the colonial masters. And that's how we're going to read the short story to the end. And so the exchange of words between the man and the elephant signifies the protest, the argument that Africans made following that being displaced from the land. It not only happened in East Africa, it happened in South Africa, because South Africa also practiced settler colonialism. The whole architecture of colonialism is exemplified by the lion and the members of the Commission of Inquiry. The lion and the members of the Commission of Inquiry set up to investigate the land dispute between the man and the elephant, represent the entire architecture of colonialism or colonial structure. Remember that in 1884, or between 1884 and 1885, there was the Berlin Conference, where European superpowers gathered in Europe, in Germany, to divide up African lands for themselves. They say, Britain, you take this part, France, you take this part, Portugal, you take this part. Africans did not have a say in the matter. Okay? Instead of us fighting over this land, let us just sit down in a conference and then debate and take this land, this part of this land among ourselves. They did that between 1884 and 1885, the Berlin Conference in Germany. And after that, there was the scramble for Africa, for the colonization of Africa. And the laws were made to favor them. Some of our kings in Africa were tricked to sign treaties and contracts and laws that ceded the land to the Europeans without their knowledge. They were deceived by agents and middlemen. So the complex laws of the colonial structure will always favor those who made the law. And who were those who made the law? The colonial masters. How do you think the law that was made by the colonial master will favor you? It will not. And that's why even in the Commission of Inquiry, the man's race is not given a representative. There's nobody to represent the man from his side, which shows injustice in the operation of colonialism. And the reason is the reason they give is that the man is not educated enough, or people from the man's race are not educated enough to have strong teeth and strong claws. What that means is that they simply said the Africans were uncivilized. You see that unbalanced structure of colonialism even in the constitution of the UN today, the United Nations today, where non-African countries has veto power. Veto power only resides with the most powerful nations of the earth. And I usually wonder what African nations go to do there. Why don't you just boycott the UN? You just go there as underdogs or even dogs. While they take the decision, you just watch. If you make a vote and they don't like, they veto it. Because veto power is to give you the right to reject a decision. And it will stand. So if all of us will now make a vote, in large numbers, majority will make a vote. After that, you just sit down, one country, you veto it. And you call that democracy. And African countries continue to go there. Why don't you boycott the UN? They call the next assembly, you don't go, nobody goes. So that is why I'm saying, even in contemporary set of society, the laws are made in such a way that it will get the poor person. The rich person will walk scot-free. It happens every day in this country. It's similar situations, but the other person is poor, the other person is rich. Different treatment. Recently, a lady died in the house of a minister. When someone dies in your house, you are the prime suspect. You're supposed to be brought in for questioning. But the minister is walking around very free, in addition to all the other crimes he has committed. And after they shout, law, 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 which law? So all your senators, your lawmakers, when they get to the chambers, they first of all look after themselves. Because after all, they are the ones who make the laws. They will give themselves the largest salary, the largest bonuses, the largest allowances. First of all, before they think about you, they will first of all protect themselves with the law, so that if anything happens, nothing happens to them. And then they look after the presidents and all the important people, protect them with the law first. And if they say that you are innocent until proven guilty, they put a clause. So that if you are a poor man, it will catch you, the clause will catch you. Because the laws have to be, no law will be straightforward. It's always be, complexity around it that they will manipulate to their own advantage. Even when it comes to making election laws, the reason we can't produce good leaders is because of the election law. And when you look at the election law and you're wise, you don't even go to vote at all. Just shouting, I'm going to vote my person, I'm going to vote my person. You are crazy. You don't look at the root of things. You're just shouting. The law does not allow you to vote the person you want into the office. The law only allows them to put whoever they want there. And all you do is just watch African Magic and you're laughing. And you wonder why the country is not better. You don't ask, what is the problem? What is the root of this issue? And once people started protesting that we are supposed to get this law right in this way, they refused. You will see it's at that point that they will ensure that nothing happens to that law. Because they want to continue to stay in power. You see in the last election, somebody clearly won the election. But when they opened, they said they were going to give us digital voting, real-time voting, which was a charade. Sometimes they open some of the pages. Instead of saying election result, you see goats, you see sheep, you see cow there. No election result. At the end of the day, they still announced the person they wanted to announce. After that, when you now ask questions, why the election was like that, because they were like, we didn't vote for you, so how did you win? They say, go to court. Go to court because the judges are in their pocket. The same judges that they are appointed. So they know already that you're not going to get justice. The election laws, they were the ones who made the election laws. And then they are the ones who pay the judges, who appointed them. Some of them that are gifted houses abroad, within Nigeria and all of that. And they have their own judges that they will ask to do certain cases. So where are you going to get the justice? So part of the reasons colonialism lasted in Africa was this complex colonial laws that we are talking about. Because no matter how Africans protested, they will meet among themselves and say, but this is the law, they signed this agreement, they handed over the land to us. In the Treaty of 1885, the king signed that the land should go to you. The king will say, I didn't even know what I was signing. That's the injustice we are talking about. So the man continues to rely on that law for years without seeing justice. Because when the law is bad, it is bad. The bad laws cannot produce justice until it is changed. But who is going to change the law? Who is going to change the law? And so that was how East Africans decided to create the movement, go underground, and start fighting the colonial masters through guerrilla warfare. And that's the violence that is depicted towards the end of the short story. So you could see that the white man is not sincere. The Europeans were not sincere. They are corrupt, not sincere. They are thieves, criminals, to come into another person's land, trick them to take the land, and subjugate the owners of the land, force them into laboring for you so that you will continue to grow rich. You repatriate the capital back to your continent, to your country. I always say that the wealth that Europe took from Africa will never finish. The wealth that Europe took from Africa, where was Europe before colonialism? Nothing, they were suffering. There was a time even when in England, someone stealing a kerchief will result in the person being sent to prison and then being exiled out of the country to America, to build America and Australia and other places. Because the people were hungry. There was no food, no employment, no space for people to live. So how did they suddenly become so rich? They stole the wealth from Africa. We go to Europe today. I was in Germany in 2016. It is so developed. And you wonder how they got to that point. I mean, the economy is so solid that now that the ones even giving us aid, say we're giving you grant, supporting your government. With your own money, with our money that they took, they have a wonderful transportation system. I was in Spain in 2019. You have a time that you're waiting for your train. And when that time comes, you see the train will arrive. It happens in Nigeria. And the train is not waiting for it to be full. It will just go because it's going on time. In Nigeria, it has to be full and then they load things on top. You just see they're being read there. The next one is coming in 4 minutes, and there's a countdown. From 4 to 1, or to 3 to 2 to 1, 1 minute you see the train coming. And then when it comes, the door opens, everybody goes in, and then once the door is closed, it moves. And then it will continue like that throughout the day, 24 hours. Non-stop. But that's our money. They didn't have that resources. They didn't have the resources to do that. They stole it from Africa. And they continue to steal from Africa. Because our leaders don't have sense. Only recently that we have some leaders that are beginning to understand. Begin to ask questions. And once you begin to ask questions like that, you have to start protecting yourself. Rejecting some of that stupid offers that used to drain. Because even when they wanted to leave, they still made certain laws that subjugated the continent to ensure that the continent will never be reached. And some of our leaders, when they get into office and they see those laws, and they see the gun being pointed at them, they won't say anything. You can't imagine that Francophone Africa keeps paying certain amount of money to France, printing their currency through France. They call themselves independent. France says they will save some of their money for them, certain percentage of their income for them, and they accept it. And any leader that questions that will soon die. It's the same thing that the US is doing, going around bullying countries, but they will not tell you the right reason for whatever they are doing. It is always economic, to take the resources that they took during colonial times to continue to take till today, because if they don't take from Africa, 5 years, 10 years, they will not survive. When some of the African leaders started doing reforms, we saw France shaking, the economy of France shaking, and it's going to collapse. After they said that Africa is poor. Africa is not poor. It's a strategy that they are using to loot from Africa, to look rich, while Africa remains poor with resources. And we need to educate the next generation of leaders to understand these things, to know that laws can be overturned. If you ask them to overturn the laws to favor you and they refuse, then you can take violence. Violence is also necessary, it's allowed in Marxist ideology. And that's what the man did at the end of the short story. It was the end of the short story. So you can see that indigenous language that the man uses there, I think it is glossing because he has translated it. Because when he says, which literally means, that's glossing. It means that he has translated it. Ngenda di Ndagaga Motegi, which literally means whatever trace on the earth can be trapped. So the colonial masters was not going to remain here forever. As long as Africans rose up and fought them, as long as our intellectuals rose up and fought them, they were not going to remain here forever. Look at the character like Kihika in A Grain of Wheat. He was not a numbskull. Numbskulls cannot fight and liberate societies. And that's why they don't allow intellectuals to lead us again. Because Europeans still interfere with our elections. And that's why they enthrone people who have questionable certificates, questionable character, questionable integrity to lead us. They have to put people that they have something on, some people that can blackmail. Because it was intellectuals in Africa that dethroned them. Intellectuals who wrote poetry, who could write literature, who could write drama. Those were the people that dethroned them, not the people that they educated with the Bible. So, these people went abroad and studied Marxism, learned about revolutions in other parts of the world and came back. These people were the people who fought in the wars and knew the ideology behind wars. Like the General R, in A Grain of Wheat. And they don't want those kind of people to lead us again. They just bring numbskull. People, when they stand up, they say, Milogan, beans, rice, Gary, Agua Ibom, Balablu. That's what a leader is saying to the people. Somebody that has attention of the national television and journalists and everywhere will just stand there and say, Balablu. And he became president. Recruits 50 million youths. What they will eat, eba, gasapa, curry. That's not a leader. That's just a puppet that's put there by Western nations. And they do the same all over the place, including the governors, the local government chairmen, just idiots. And they don't have any say. They're just yes men. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what they do. And that's why nothing is happening in our country. All the way to the counselors. Suddenly, the counselor went to school to advise students to read. But it's the counselor that needs to read. They just happened to give her a position. And she bought some books and went to a primary school to tell the students that she wants them to be future leaders like her. Insane. It's not as if they don't have articulate, educated people in those communities that they could have chosen as counselors. They just want people that they can control. So when the location comes, they just divide it. The person says, yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're asking why that money is taken. The money that should have been used to build roads, sponsor education, build good schools. So the reason I'm making all those analogies is because whatever happened in colonial times is still happening in our society till today. Not much has changed. We just changed the faces of the leaders. Because of the presence of multinational companies in Africa today, the Western nations who own those companies are still interested in our leadership process. And they cannot risk choosing people like Nkrumah, Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba. They cannot stand any leader who wants to bring about the right change. They will either kill them or get another brother of his who does not have integrity to overthrow him. After all, they were the ones who trained your soldiers. They have information about your army, your capability, and they can strike at any time. You see what they did to Maduro. They used someone inside Maduro's security to gain access to him, to get information, know when to catch him. So that's why at the end of the story, the man says that peace is costly. Peace is costly. And when you take that statement and look at it from the perspective of what our people had to go through in order to be free, at least to gain the flag independence that we have today, you will understand what we are talking about. So many people died. So many people went to prison. Amidst betrayal by some Africans who have slave mentality, who don't want to be free. A temporary comfort. Because there will always be people like that. There's no way Americans and the Europeans will continue to have influence in our land today, if not for some people like Mugu, in a grain of wheat. Jealous, hateful individual. They're just wondering why their brother is progressing, why it can't be them. Slaves, that's slave mentality. And they will collaborate with the outsider to destroy the land. That's why Achebe was right when he said, the white man put a knife to the thing that held us together and we are falling apart. That division was all that it took. Because when they decided to divide it into two sides, the colonial master will always know where to pick their people from. So, Jomo Kenyatta's The Gentleman of the Jungle, in a nutshell, is an allegorical depiction of the history of colonialism in East Africa, beginning from the vulnerable arrival of the colonial master, the naivety of Africans granting them hospitality, to the point when the colonial masters established themselves firmly on the land and refused to leave, even leading to the displacement of the Africans, the struggle for Africans to be free through peaceful means, first of all, and the injustice they got the lack of justice they got through those peaceful means. And finally, the resort to violent measures by creating the movement, the Mau Mau freedom movement, the guerrilla warfare, and the eventual departure of the white man, at least physically, from the continent. Because when you want to talk of new colonialism, you realize that colonialism has not really ended, that we have a new form of colonialism. And how does the new form of colonialism work? The new form of colonialism works not on the physical presence of the white man in Africa. It works based on the colonial structures that were set up before the colonial masters physically departed from Africa. So it is the colonial structures that sustain colonialism in Africa today. Colonial structures exist in the laws that were put in place that have not been dismantled. Colonial structures exist even in the religious structures. The fact that you still go to church sustains the colonial structures. Because it was the white man who brought your religion. Religion was never meant to make you to go to heaven. That was the lie they told you. As I said, if the white man knew that that religion was supposed to take you to heaven, they will not even show it to you. That's why they hid science and technology from you. And they continue to do so till today. There are some scientific experiments that they do now that they will even protect the scientists. They don't allow them to go anywhere or expose what they have done until they have a product, until it gets to a point where they can patent it. But they freely gave you the religion. And the religion teaches you how to be timid. And that is, if someone slaps you on the right, on the right cheek, turn the other one for him to slap. If somebody wrongs you 30 times a day and says, please forgive me, forgive the person. That is the structure that they're using. So that after everything they did to Africa, all they do is, we have apologized, but we have apologized now. We have apologized. Sorry, we are sorry that we did colonialism in Africa and we caused so many problems. People were killed that we did not intend. We are sorry. After that, sorry, what? And because they taught you the religion of saying sorry, that your heavenly Father will forgive you when you say sorry. They now use the same thing against you in social matters. Somebody came to your land, killed your ancestors, took your land, took your resources to build their empire at home. That children go to school free. You can imagine the atrocities they committed against Africans. And then after that, after many years, the descendants will come and say, we are sorry. We are sorry for what we did. Some of them don't even want to apologize. So, is that all? You accept it because you were told in the Bible that they wrote and gave you that when you say sorry to someone, that it's okay. And that's why people who know the system exploit it all the time. They exploit it all the time. After all they will do is to come out and say what? Sorry. Sorry, oh, sorry. But the harm already been done. If they wanted to take your eye, they already taken the eye. Those that they cut the hands. Because, for instance, in the Congo, there were times that they will cut the workers' hand because they were standing for some hours. They just wanted to rest. So now, sorry will cover for all of that, right? It will cover because your mentality that was raised by that religion will tell you that that sorry is okay. They forget that there is what is also called, after sorry, there is restitution. Right? Sure, you know restitution? Yes. What is restitution? You have repented, you have been forgiven of your sins, and then suddenly one day they preach restitution to you. What does it mean? Or you've never heard of that gospel before? And so what does it mean? Because it's the same thing that the colonial masters have to do. There was a pastor who apologized recently for preaching prosperity and collecting tithes. So I'm sorry, I was misled by the devil. I have now seen the light. You understand? I was wrong. And I preached tithe. I collected tithe all these many years. So I'm sorry. Fine. You have accepted your sorry. What is next? What next? Do you know what is next? Who knows what is next? Return the tithe to those who collected it from. That's how you get it right with God. If you want to practice the gospel well, in your own gospel, all right? Because we will not say, the religion was brought by the colonial master. We won't read the Bible. We'll read the Bible because we are going to turn the Bible against you. Because if we don't read the Bible, we cannot turn it against you. It comes to the Quran, we are going to read the Quran. When the day comes, we argue against the Quran. Because we cannot afford to be ignorant. Yes, there's forgiveness, but it doesn't stop there. For God, pastor, there's restitution. So return the tithe. Return the tithe to the people who took it from. So the same thing we tell the colonial masters: if you are sorry about colonialism, then do your restitution. In fact, Ghana is asking for reparation for slavery and colonialism. That's the kind of leaders that we're looking for. Not slaves. Not slaves that we have who call themselves leaders. If you are led by real leaders, you will know because of the changes that we have in society. When you are led by slaves, you will know. So when you say we are sorry about colonialism, we are sorry about slavery, fine. Do restitution. Return the money. Return the wealth. Even just common artwork that they stole. Artwork of people they said were not civilized. All those are ugly masquerades that they used to say we were barbaric. They stole them. But those are actually symbols of our civilization. And they now used it to decorate their museums. They didn't even have anything in their museum. They used our objects to decorate those museums in Europe and America. Now return them. These are bold thieves. They even come on television and they say they cannot return. Bold thieves. You have to even force them to return some of them. You need to do restitution. If you are really sorry. Have a very good morning.